It's really interesting hearing you describe this early process of becoming an FBI agent, because I have a good friend of mine who I grew up with who I am insistent is an FBI agent, and he won't quite tell me, but I know what he does, and I know everything he's saying is lining up.
This is fascinating to me because I've heard people tell me stuff. What is it about this guy that is
so
a dead giveaway?
I'll tell you a few things. So
and I'll tell you if it's horse shit or not.
He does IT. He does like security stuff, computer wise.
All right.
He's pretty good at what he does. Like ever since we were young, he was always like that guy for that kind
So
of
he's
thing.
like a cybersecurity type?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And I've known him since I was like 12, and he was doing that stuff with the computers.
Okay.
And at one point, he had an internship for I don't know what the company was, but he had an internship, and he mentioned to me, this was a few years ago at this point, he was like, I might have to get like a security clearance at some point for this. And then he never brought it up again. And every time I've asked
geographically,
him,
where is he?
He's in Virginia.
Okay.
So he works a lot in DC though. He tells me.
Yeah.
So he mentioned to me a couple years ago that he was potentially going to get that clearance, and now whenever I ask about it, he's like, "Oh no, like I'm just working at the company, doing software stuff."
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I can't. Here's what I'll tell you. Most people who work for the FBI are more than welcome to share that with their friends and family members, right? There's no
Interesting.
There's no need to be cagey about that. Right?
So you're not living like a double life.
Well, I mean, again, some people go undercover. I was undercover for 2 full years living as someone else. So in that sense, you're truly living a double life. But your normal agent working cases or cybersecurity specialist who's not an agent out there doing undercover work or anything like that, who's working in the office doing very important work, there's no reason for them to bullshit their friends and family about what they do unless that just gives them a sense of importance somehow. So, I mean, I was an agent for 26 years, including several years undercover. My friends, family, and neighbors all knew what I did for a living. There was no reason to keep it under my hat. Why begin your relationship with people living a lie? Now, the asshole who's sitting next to me on an airplane when I'm flying from Florida to California, who says, "So what do you do for a living?" Does he get to know? No.
Doesn't need to know.
I can tell him I'm an accountant. Nobody wants to talk to me at that point.
You know what's funny is that is similar to the lie that I tell people when I'm tired and don't feel like talking. That's what I do. I'm like, accountant usually is what I throw out.
That shuts them down immediately. the Ambien they took when they got on the plane
immediately hits.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it is to an extent questionable when the government audits itself under the same roof.
I get it.
For sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough decision. I mean, the FBI, to its credit, has that brutal internal affairs division that investigates crooked FBI agents. I'm glad it's there. If I get myself sideways because I do something inappropriate, using my FBI car for personal use or something like that, I want to be investigated by FBI agents who know what it's like to be an FBI agent and not some third-party overseer.
That makes a lot of sense. But
the problem is then you need to make sure that internal affairs division has integrity and it just doesn't become a good old boys
You can't
club.
have that prejudice and
right.
know.
And so the FBI, I think they often swing the other way and end up having a lot of public hangings of agents who mess up and do the wrong thing.
Really?
Well, again, it's normal. It's not like he's a spy, but it's the use of the FBI car is a very typical infraction that an FBI agent will do, and they end up going on suspension for 6 weeks with no pay for misusing the FBI or taking their wife home, a passenger in an FBI car without because you're not allowed to have passengers or use it for personal use. That's not why the taxpayer gives me an FBI car.
Oh, that actually, I'm intrigued by FBI car. Like, I didn't even realize you got a car.
Yeah, it's like we're not police officers, but
we
function like that. I mean, at some point can't take the bus to go do that investigation.
Is there any cool secret stuff built into that car?
Police lights, siren.
Okay.
But it's quiet. You look at the car, it looks like a Ford Escort or whatever.
It's a normal looking, maybe undercover cop car.
Exactly. And a kind of a very plain sedan or whatever, but it's got a police package on it with lights, sirens, and a kind of a CB radio type thing.
They ever give you guys any really like out there cars you wouldn't expect as like
the seizure cars and the undercover cars are kind of out there.
Oh, so they would use cars they seized for this.
Yeah, so I mean, they're not in the same city, right? You don't want to seize like a pink Porsche in Chicago and then have it back on the streets. So
the drug dealer you seized it from sees you drive.
Most seized cars are auctioned off by the U.S. Marshal Service, but the agency can apply to have it used for undercover operations. So there's some pimped out Mercedes out there. That was maybe taken in New York and now it's on the streets of Los Angeles in an undercover operation.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
So I mean, when I think of an undercover cop car, I'm thinking Crown Vic. I'm thinking Ford Explorer.
Well, no, you're not talking undercover. You're talking you're talking unmarked.
Unmarked.
Unmarked is different than undercover. Undercover is what I'm
Yes.
driving to kind of give myself credibility as a high-rolling criminal. Unmarked means I just want to blend in with traffic. Yeah, my last car was like a Hyundai Elantra or something like that.
So you've talked about some of this undercover work that you've done during your investigations. What is that like? Because, I mean, I can't even begin to fathom.
Yeah, the undercover program at the FBI, a lot of people misunderstand it. Very few agents ever go undercover. If you want to be an undercover agent, you need to apply or be appointed for a special undercover school. And it's a really, really hard school. It's 2 full weeks, and it's it's very much abusive. You're doing a lot of role playing, a lot of sleep deprivation, and they're really kind of evaluating you to bring you to your breaking point. And then if you pass that class, and a lot of people fail out, and there's nothing wrong with that because not everyone's built to be undercover. So I passed that class in 2003 around Thanksgiving week. And then I'm a certified undercover. Then what happens is then you get these emails every now and then saying, we need a white male in his 40s who can play the role of an accountant, or we need a Hispanic, we need an Arab-speaking agent, any age who knows, Sunni Muslim culture. And so you get these constant emails, and then every now and then you say, oh, I'd like to do this one. I'll take a week or two off to be this.
So they're sending you almost just FBI job offers, like it's Indeed or something.
Yeah. It was funny that as an undercover, I would get the emails for like, we're looking for a black female. Like, you can't collate that. Like,
Wrong one.
Why am I getting this email? Yeah. And so it happened. But yeah. So, but again, I'm not like a credible crack dealer or anything like that. And so most of my undercover roles were in the financial crimes area, where I'm usually playing a very, very dumb rich guy who wants to invest money in a Ponzi scheme. I want to invest money in something that we think is a Ponzi scheme, and I'm recording the sales pitch from the bad guy.
Ooh, I like that. I like that.
I'm not cutting him a check at the end, but I want to lock in exactly the sales pitch that he's telling the victims of his Ponzi scheme, because all we're doing is hearing stories from them after the fact. And what's the defense attorney going to say? Right? The defense attorney is going to say he was never promising 6% a week. That's crazy. Who would believe that? This guy's made a bad investment, and now he's crying about it. But now he's lying about my client. But if I can get that investment pitch where he's telling me that, listen, you're going to get 6% a week in this Forex trading program, that locks it in. He's got nowhere to go.
When you're wearing a wire, or you're recording someone without their knowledge, is it how people typically imagine, where it's like a wire actually taped to your chest under your shirt?
It used to be, yeah. We used to have these reel-to-reel tape recorders called Nagras. And you'd put them in the small of your back, and then you would take the wires and bring them up over your shoulders and have the wires here in stereo with the microphone on either end. But they sucked. I mean, first of all, it was before, this is like the magnetic tape age. That's how old I am. And but the Nagras would get hot and like burn the shit out of the small of your back. So the longer you were like talking with the bad guy, it's like having an oven against your back. Eventually, once we got digital, we were able to kind of have much smaller devices, and devices that are more easily hidden.
Are you able to tell me like what those devices are like?
No.
Okay. Figure. How small?
I can't get it.
Okay. Yeah, I figure. I'm so intrigued.
I don't want to be a dick, but thanks
I'm
for understanding.
No.
Yeah.
Listen, I've talked to people who can't tell me many things. You know, it's okay. I don't take any offense to it. Wow, I can't even imagine how crazy it is though. Like you've probably got like a little like pea-sized thing. You might have even wired this shit up right now.
Oh, I'm not an FBI agent. So if I were to wire you up now, I'm doing something really bad.
You're just a PI now, so you're still investigating stuff. Yeah. Not for the feds. But taking it back to the undercover stuff, because I'm still very fascinated. Was there ever any times you like almost got caught wearing a wire or being undercover? Yeah,
there was one time I was undercover, and I had to change my appearance pretty drastically for this undercover assignment. And I knew a bunch of people in my undercover capacity, but I was also doing undercover work in Chicago. And so I had a newborn daughter. Well, maybe she may have been she was like a year and a half. And I brought her to a park, and I'm like, when I'm off one day and I'm putting her on the swings, and I see somebody there that I knew in my undercover capacity. And my undercover character did not have kids. Right, but I had a story that I was living with my sister, and she had some kids, and so every now and then I go take care of her kids for her, and so I'm like pushing my daughter on a swing, and I'm just hoping to God that she doesn't call me daddy.
Oh, no.
And so eventually I said, well, I got to go. Good seeing you. I grab my daughter, pick her up, and like put her in the stroller and walk away as fast as possible. And that person who could have blown my cover, like, I saw that guy, Tom, and he had a girl who was calling him daddy. That guy doesn't have a kid. It could have caused trouble for me undercover.
I mean, that must have been gut-wrenching, recognizing that person at the park.
You got to just roll with it, though. That's the deal, man. That's that again, undercover school trains you. In undercover school, every scenario you do goes terribly wrong. And so that way, if something goes wrong in real life, you're not going to freeze or panic. You're going to roll with it.
How do you get good at like internalizing those fears, those feelings?
Well, it's training, and you're also getting paid to do it. It's also voluntary. No one held a gun to my head and made me be an undercover FBI agent.
Yep.
I raised my hand and volunteered for the assignment. And so when you take the job, you understand that there's some physical risk and some psychological risk, but the idea is you need to rely on your training. They're not taking agents who raise their hand to be undercovers and then making them go undercover the next day. They're sending you to a very expensive and detailed school so you'll be good at it.
Yeah, I can't imagine. It's just every stage of like school and training you described for this, it sounds like so much. For a guy who said that you don't like school, I mean, it sounds like you did plenty of it.
I think school's different than training, right?
For sure.
Like if you took a class on broadcasting and electronics and how to be a better podcaster, you'd probably be hanging on their every word, kind of trying to pick up tips
I probably
and
would be
tricks,
super into
right?
that. Yeah.
Right. But I didn't really care about calculus. If you held a gun to my head, I couldn't tell you even why I would want to know calculus, but I had to sit through calculus classes to get my in high school and college. And so I think it all depends. Training to be doing something you really want to do is just a very different experience than getting educated in stuff that you don't really care about. And I admire good students who actually are willing to rise to the occasion and care about calculus for that semester, but I didn't have it in me.
Yeah, I thankfully never made it to calculus. Geometry took me out. Geometry took me down. Before I dropped out of high school, that was where I ended.
Yeah, well, look at you now.
Got my GED though.
Well, that's
woohoo!
Good. It counts.
Okay, so we'll go ahead a little bit. Now that we've kind of talked about you and your history, I want to just pick your brain about general FBI stuff.
Yeah, please.
I'm really intrigued. So first and foremost, right before we filmed this episode, I just watched a Joe Rogan episode where Kash Patel...
I watched it today on the plane ride here.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Sitting director of the FBI goes on Joe Rogan and starts addressing like conspiracy theories and is getting asked about JFK. And during the episode, Elon makes his now notorious tweet about Trump being on the Epstein list.
You see Director Patel treat that like it was kryptonite? He does not want to get in this.
Yes. What do you think, though, about someone who's a sitting FBI director going and doing interviews like that? Because that's a very new phenomenon.
Doing long-form interviews? I love the idea that any government official would go and do a long-form interview on a podcast.
Yeah.
Because I think this kind of long-term give and take is way better than the soundbite politics we have in most
100%.
journalism. And so I think it's a great thing. And I have my issues with Kash Patel, but I think it showed tremendous courage to sit there and have a long-form conversation where Rogan actually did challenge him on some points.
For sure, and I think he handled it pretty well.
Yeah,
too,
I thought he performed very well in that show.
I thought it was a great conversation. Yeah. It's interesting though. When, let's say, for example, during your time at the FBI before you had become a PI and everything, would you be allowed to go do a podcast and be like, I am an FBI agent?
This is what's interesting. Yes, and I have. But here's the deal, is that I was in addition to working cases, I had a side hustle at the FBI as a press spokesperson. The FBI at some point realized that I present myself well in the media, and so when they needed to shove somebody on TV or to a magazine show I was the FBI agent that was shoved out to speak on behalf of the FBI, and so I was very proud of doing that. And if you go on YouTube and type in Tom Simon FBI, you'll see all sorts of clips before my hair turned gray.
I found so many news clips of you.
Before my hair turned gray, back when I was young. And so when they needed somebody for an episode of American Greed or a TV show, I was often that guy. So I also did podcasts in the early days of podcasting where I would sit and talk to people and do long-form interviews like this, speaking on behalf of the FBI. Now I can be a little more loose.
Yep. Now you can just speak for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.